Live and alert on the north side of the dirt. It is your man D Real, and we out here live, and we're getting ready to do some discussions, like I always do. And this discussion is gonna focus around public domain and that Hanna Barbera cinematic universe that we all been itching really bad to see. And I got my man, as usual, who always want to get on board and rock with me about this Hanna Barbera thing. This is my man Kokai no Sakere. I'ma let him introduce himself, tell you what he do, what he like, what he don't like, and we finna get in. Talk to him, bro.
My name is Ko Kai E. I'm the best there is, the best there was, the best there will be, and I'll be like that for life. If you don't believe me, ask me again, and I'll tell you. We have fun. I don't think I've known D Real for like the last 20 some odd years. We be vibing like blurs. That's black and a nerd. We be vibing as a blurred all day long. So I look forward to this discussion. It should be pretty organic. So that means that you're going to need to follow along and take notes. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. We'll get back to you because this should be like an ongoing syndicated conversation between him and I, because every time I try and do a deep dive into any subject that we're talking about, I come up with more questions and answers than I had before I started. And clarity is a what is it, elusive so, elusive quality, okay, especially
Yes.
on this subject, because public domain, it seems to shift every generation that you want to talk about.
Shoot, not even generations. Um, I would even go so far as to say maybe like every 5 to 10 years.
Okay,
I mean,
so
and if you're a large corporation, like say Warner Brothers or
uh-oh,
a Disney, you
uh-oh,
can you have the capital to acquire entire institutions. Star
yes,
Wars is an entire institution owned by Disney. Marvel is an entire institution owned by Disney. DC Comics is an entire institution owned by Warner Brothers. Hanna
oh,
Barbera is an entire institution owned by Warner Brothers. We're going to talk about public domain, what specifically public domain is, and how it affects the stuff we like.
okay, so that's a big word to just use right there when it comes down to public domain. Specific. Okay, that's rough. Cause where we coming from, dude, like you just said, it shifts every 5 to 10 years. And if you're dealing with the institution, the reason why that institution is a threat to anybody who's trying to use something that we think or might possibly be public domain is because they have this thing called lawyers, and they have the capacity to sue you. Now, if a entity that owns a property does not have the capacity, I'm rhyming, to sue you, then you're pretty much safe and can use a character. The thing is, now, if we come into a court of law, what is and what is not public domain? I wanted to start off with a character that is absolute public domain, okay, that we know of in the United States of America, but still gets used. Here goes. And the character is the headless horseman and Ichabod Crane. So the legend of Sleepy Hollow is used almost every Halloween in some way, shape, or form. Okay. The thing is that it's 200 years old, which means that everybody associated with this story is dead. In fact, it wasn't even originally published in America, even though it's an American story. It was published by Washington Irving, who was born in 1783 at the end of the American Revolution. He was named after George Washington. George Washington seemed to like bless this man right before he died in 1799. Don't ask me how I know that, bro. Anyway, okay, Washington Irving published the Legend of Sleepy Hollow when he was in England, and incidentally, he was more popular in England than Charles Dickens. Let that sink
Okay.
in. Let that
Okay.
sink in. Okay. So he published it in March 1820. which means that was 200 years ago. The biggest mistake that we make when it comes down to any kind of presentation about the Headless Horseman is that most of the characters in the story are bilingual. New York was still being filled with people, immigrants that were coming in. So Sleepy Hollow was a Dutch Glen, which means that everybody was bilingual. Ichabod Crane was a Yankee coming up, so he was the only real Englishman in the area. The Headless Horseman himself was a Hessian. That's a big word, which means German.
Now, don't lose your train of thought, bro. I just real quick, I want to shout out the folks that's in the room right now. Mario Van Bryson, he said, "What's up?"
What's
Uh,
up?
CGZ said, "Whoa!" I guess we are wowing him with this. Well, you doing all talking right now, but we wowing him with what we saying. And of course, the ever-present Kamoyo kid said, "Nice." So we are not alone, brother. Please continue.
Quite all right, quite all right, quite all right. So there was a recent presentation of Sleepy Hollow by Tim Burton. Now I remember, and I'm hoping that the other people do too, the Disney version of him, because that was the one that was popular in my childhood and that we all wanted to be a part of the Headless Horseman and everything else like that because of Disney. Now, because Disney put that out, and when Disney died, neither you nor I can use the Disney version of the Headless Horseman.
Right.
But Tim Burton can do it and then totally change the story to the point where Ichabod Crane is not a slave master. I mean, a schoolmaster. See, this is what I be dealing with on a regular basis. I'll be talking about anti-racism in American
I
history. So
know,
that's why I
I
said slave master.
know,
I
I
apologize.
know.
He wasn't a schoolmaster, right? He was a detective from like Scotland Yard type detective, and he wanted to focus in on the scientific presentation of crime fighting, which got him in trouble. So he had to go to Sleepy Hollow to try and figure out why all these people were coming up missing. It's a beautiful storyline. Tim Burton completely reinvented the character. Now, because of copyright laws, neither you nor I or the next person, because the studio can come and sue you, as long as Tim Burton can come and sue you because he's got the money to do that, we can't use that presentation. That means you can't do a play that's based on Ichabod Crane being a detective. You can't do a story. You can't do a comic book. You can't do a comic strip. You can't do anything on YouTube. You were talking about that YouTube will allow you to do clips from films. So, from my
Yeah,
understanding,
I
go
do it
ahead.
all the time. I do it all the time. And what it is, it's what's known in well, at least in social media and also in music as
Oh,
a interpolation. And what an
oh,
interpolation is you're utilizing themes, parts, pieces of something that is trademark, copywritten, something of that nature. Um, but you're using it in a different way. You're creating an entirely different product. Therefore, social media formats such as YouTube will allow you to show a video of a movie if you're doing a movie review, if you're
ah,
doing a reaction to a trailer, if you are using pieces and parts of a movie to express an entirely different ideal. That is allowable. A lot of users on YouTube that have copywritten material will allow you to use it, but like in your editing process, when you're editing for a video, it will come up and it'll say, "This is copywritten material," and it'll have like a little sign like come look at this. But there are some people who won't allow you to use stuff at all,
right.
but there are other people like, this is copywritten, but we'll let you use it. You know what I'm saying? So the only downside to that is if you decide to try to get some type of monetization off of that particular video, you might be paying them cats whose video you use too.
Correct. And that means that you will be paying more than what you made off of that video. That becomes the problem. Okay. That
Yep.
becomes the problem. Right. So I
And
went in.
I forgot to ask you. You can see the comments, right?
Yes, I can see the comments.
Okay, if you feel like at any point you want to speak on any comment I got displayed, fire away.
Quite all right. Quite all right. So the very first thing that I looked at when it came down to copyright was, what's the definition when it comes down to, can I access a character? Okay. What I learned was, everything is based on when the creator of the character dies. Then I learned that family members can renew the copyright in the United States of America. So that means that the copyright can die everywhere else on the planet, but inside the 3,000 by 2,000 square feet and economic zone called the United States of America. I mean, 3,000 by 2,000 square miles of the economic zone called the United States of America, you will not be able to utilize it. So if it's the I Have a Dream speech, it's 35 years after Dr. King dies, and then because Coretta renewed the copyright, it's 35 years after she dies. So now the rule became about 70 years. And I'm like, okay, then that makes sense from when the creator dies. But if it's under syndication, like you're saying with Warner's or Universal or Disney or anything else, then the copyright now becomes from the iteration of that character. So if they redesign the character, you may be able to use the previous design of the character, but you can't use the current design of the character, which means in order to keep yourself out of trouble, you can't use the character at all. Does that make sense?
Or you just don't use the current interpolation. Some examples being, like we discussed before we went on air, a lot of people don't realize it. Aladdin is
Yes.
public domain. A lot of people
Yes.
don't realize it. Alice in Wonderland is public domain. A lot of people don't realize it. The Little Mermaid is public domain. All of that stuff is public domain. Disney is just the one who took it and made their interpolation of it. And because it's Disney and there's a big monolith, and we're like, oh, we don't want to offend the mighty Disney, they'll sue our draws off. So we think theirs is the only version that can be made or could be made. I remember at one point there were a couple of different versions of the story of 1001 Arabian Nights.
Yes. There was an entire movie series.
Which is also public domain. And it was utilized by Hallmark, I believe it was. Hallmark did a 2-part miniseries of it. Did we know that before that, Hanna-Barbera had a cartoon called The Arabian Nights?
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did Ralph Bakshi do something? He was using everything.
Well, I think Ralph Bakshi was all over J.R.R. Tolkien stuff around that time. So yeah, he did a Lord of the Rings movie, I believe it was. But the point I'm getting at is, for those of us, and there's a few cats here in the chat, like my man Theo right there, Dracula's public domain. But well, we know that Dracula's public domain here, not in the UK.
Not in the UK, bro.
Yeah. So
even though it was written in 1897, it isn't.
Bram Stoker's estate, or whoever owns Bram Stoker's estate, has the original rights to that.
Correct.
So as long as you don't make it in the UK, Theo, you good, player. And somebody just asked me about Black Panther. Black Panther would have renewed this year. But of course, we know Marvel and Disney ain't about to let that slip through their fingers. As much as they don't want to make a movie about it and don't want nobody else to make a movie about it, they like, we still want to keep it. And so, yeah. There's a few characters at Marvel that they just re-registered for copyright, and the Black Panther was one of them this year. So, yeah. Hallmark did cover everything, didn't they? They matter of fact, Hallmark had some of the more memorable shows. They did one about the Odyssey.
Oh, like
they did one
Homer?
about Hallmark, yeah.
Homer. Homer's Odyssey.
Huh?
Like the Odyssey, like Homer, like Odysseus.
Armand Asante played the role of Odysseus. And they also
Is he
did
Greek?
Jason. Hallmark also did Jason and the Argonauts.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, but everything in Greek mythology is, well, you can't use the DC Hercules nor the Marvel Hercules, but everything is like,
How
public
hard
domain.
is it to make a Hercules?
Well, that's right.
Charlton Comics used to have a Hercules. Golden Key used to have a Hercules. There are a
Charleston
lot of
Comics.
comic book companies that made a Hercules. There was a movie featuring Bolo from Enter the Dragon, called Chinese Hercules.
I'm done, dude. I'm done.
So as long as you didn't utilize it in the same way as Marvel, DC, or the folks who cast Steve Reeves as Hercules, you're
Oh,
good. Steve
well, that was
Reeves.
a pretty good series. That was a pretty good series of movies. Steve Reeves. He was pretty
Wait,
good. He was pretty elegant. He
you
was pretty.
utilizing on the fact that dude was buff. That's all that was. Because Steve Reeves could not act his way out of a paper bag. Matter of fact, Steve Reeves was dubbed. There wasn't even Steve Reeves' voices talking in those movies.
These is facts, y'all. For those who know bodybuilding history and everything else like that, Arnold Schwarzenegger being a fan or not, these is facts, dude. Steve Reeves could act about as well as the guy who plays what's his name? He did the John Wayne. Yeah, that guy. That wasn't John, because John Wayne never acted a day in his life. That was John Wayne, ladies and gentlemen.
The first thing come to my mind when you say John Wayne, that that verse in Public Enemy song.
Oh, got you. Completely understand, bro. Completely understand. You crazy. So the rule of thumb at the present moment is that if you're looking at a character that was crafted before 1926 or 1928, you're looking at a potential absolute public domain. That means that you can use it any which way you want to. You can reproduce the book, you can reproduce the comic strip, you can reproduce the look, do anything you want to. You don't have to change anything, and you can just make money off of it. You don't have to report back to an estate. Now, the issue becomes if it's anything after that. So the first character that fits into that kind of like is like popular enough for us to use in our generation would be Little Orphan Annie, because she came out in August of 1924. Okay, so that's about 4 years outside of our little range. The issue with Little Orphan Annie is that you've got all these iterations of Little Orphan Annie since then. So you can only use the original newspaper comic strips, which was put out by Tribune Media Services. And they seem to have been pretty big, just like King service syndicated services, right? So
who's still on the race to quite a few characters.
They got Flash Gordon on lock, bruh. On lock. Like you cannot use Flash Gordon at all.
The Phantom.
The original Phantom. Which one? Because I mean, we've had like 7 different generations of the Phantom. The red one was pretty cool.
The original 13th in the line, who was Kit Walker.
Got you. Right. He was racist. If you ever read those stories, dude, those stories are absolutely racist.
Well, okay. because like Mandrake the Magician, why would a king, Lothar, a king, what was he known as? The king of the 7 tribes or the prince of the 7
it's horrible,
tribes?
Dude.
Why would you leave 7 tribes to go run behind a white man with a top hat on?
Hey, dude, we got lots of issues, okay? Because we're trying to sell.
Somebody in the comments asked me, what about the character Anansi? Anansi is a character from African folklore. Of course, it's public domain.
Yes.
It's public domain. There have
It
been
is
many,
public
many,
domain.
many, many. You've got the American Gods iteration of Anansi. There's been an iteration of Anansi in Spider-Man comics. There's been an iteration of Anansi in Justice League comic books. There's been an iteration of the Orishas in comic books, and Anansi was part of those Orishas. So yeah, he's been all over the place. Public domain, no doubt in my mind.
Got you. I mean, and I'm just thinking about like Brer Rabbit is technically public domain too, even though he came out kind of late. He's a lot later than the Headless Horseman, you know.
Much
So I don't
later.
think he comes out until like 1879. So he's a pretty late character, but he is public domain because it's 70 years after the wife has died. I also learned that you could get copyright. You have to sometimes deal with grandchildren when it comes down to a character because they renewed the copyright so many times depending on how popular the character is, like Little Orphan Annie. Okay, so the question that came up into my mind when it came down to public domain characters was, what would be the best medium for them to be presented in nowadays? You know what I'm saying? So like the original, you know, where she didn't even have any pupils, it was just the eyes, you know, that original
Right,
iteration of
right.
Annie, for those of us who can still remember if you were born in the 70s, right? So you can't do the It's a Hard Knock Life for Us. I have no idea how Jay-Z did that. You can't do that song, but you could do the Little Orphan Annie look, right?
That is a perfect example of an interpolation.
Got you.
Jay
Because he only
Z
used a
did
clip of
not. Jay Z did not sing the entire song.
right.
They put a hook. They put the hook in there, and that's all he used.
Correct. So
So
I learned that the standard Little Orphan Annie storyline from the comic strip was, after she got adopted by Oliver Warbucks, he would go off to do business or an adventure, of which her arch nemesis, Mrs. Warbucks, would put her in a compromising position, re-orphan her, kick her out the house, send her away, and then she would get rescued at the end of the adventure or script that she survived by Daddy Warbucks readopting her, finding her, rescuing her. So to me, that kind of storyline is like perfect for like YouTube shorts, but not necessarily for a movie, not necessarily for um, a comic book, because that's a pretty formula driven uh storyline. It's not too good for like a streaming service or a cable network, you know what I'm saying?
well,
But
what I'm
YouTube
finding.
shorts,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go with that.
Well, what I was going to say when you mentioned streaming services, what I find has been the current trend with streaming services is they want to take an iconic character, whether it's from literary comics or whatever, and either gender and or race swap them. That's the popular thing now.
Well, when it comes down to Little Orphan Annie, that would work because like Johnny Quest, all of the persons of color in the comic strip, the original comic strip, are Indian from India, not the United States of America, but from India,
Those aren't
right?
Indians.
What are those?
Those are in whatever tribe they are. They are indigenous to the United States or to America. Excuse me.
Oh, got you. For real. True indeed.
Yeah,
Yes, correct.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
correct on that front. Yes, you're
yeah.
absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Okay. The next character that seems to be coming from that time period that's in that range, and this blew my mind too, because it was like, whoa, like, how do you do this one? His name is Popeye. So,
Oh, blow me down. Let's see what I said here. What are you talking about? Hey man, quit.
right,
You know I love me some Popeye, boy. Popeye was my original superhero. You know, I'm like,
right.
he's got a formula, and before him it was Underdog. So I'm like, okay, you got that mnemonic there. Okay, he gets in trouble or he keeps falling for the not so sexy wiles of this emaciated woman who's extremely fickle and always has to be rescued from this freaking molester. You know what I'm saying? And it's just
Hey,
like,
Pluto.
Bro,
Right.
all we got to do is change one element of that and just
Bro,
make Bluto not so rapey.
dude,
Because I'm going to tell you
dude,
right now, if you bring Bluto to the screen right now, he's going to get canceled.
bro. First, okay, so yes, so now I know Popeye mainly from the cartoons, okay, and then the Robin Williams movie in 1980, right? When he's
Right.
high on coke, the whole movie, that movie, yeah, he is. That's why he got kicked out of Mork and Mindy, right? Because he was high, dude. Okay, so they couldn't give him a script. He ad-libbed the entire movie. It's brilliant, but he's high. Just to let y'all know, he's high. Okay, so Popeye, once you get rid of the racist elements of it, because all the characters are white and they seem to go to these islands and then mess with the indigenous in very racist forms. I mean, outside of the World War II Popeye cartoons, okay, right? Because he's always doing Sinbad because his enemies are sea monsters, the sea, and Bluto. That's it. He doesn't have really too many more enemies than that. Am I right or am I wrong, bro? Okay.
I thought, well, there's, you mentioned Sinbad, but that was actually Bluto.
Correct.
I don't know if you would actually call her a villain, but there was the sea hag.
Okay. Oh my God, dude.
And the sea hag didn't pop up as often, and I don't know exactly what Alice the Goon would be.
Okay. Well, he did have the little alien thing, right? But he also had like the pterodactyl. Come on, man. I mean, so depending on which island he went to, he had a villain that was associated with the sea monsters and the island. Okay. So you can do those particular stories. Again, because Popeye has such a long story arc, I mean, or popularity, like you can't say Popeyes without the apostrophe because that's copyright by the chain. And they
Right.
can use that particular iteration of the face, but they can't use anything else. They can't use his full body. They can't use any other characters. They can just use that part of his face. That's it that they can copyright. You know that they could use. Um, the characters are, I think, if it comes down to any kind of iteration that's modern, have more to work with than the Popeye character himself. Like, I would love to see an origin story of Olive Oil and why she is like so emaciated. Like, is she bulimic or does she have like an eating problem or something? You know, because
Uh, Somebody just brought up another very popular public domain that we are utilizing the heck out of. Those three guys right there. Thank you,
ooh,
Kamoyo Kid, by the way. Yeah, totally public domain.
absolutely. I mean,
You just
you can publish the Mary Shelley original novel if you want to.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, and what a lot of people don't understand, lycanthropy, werewolves, that's Slavic folklore. Okay,
Yes.
nobody has a copyright to werewolves. Maybe the Wolf Man specifically, because that's a property of Universal. But but
Oh,
but
wow.
the copyright got renewed because I think in 2010, I want to say, Universal made a Wolfman movie with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. Very good movie, by the way.
Okay, so hold up. I got a question then.
Yes,
They can't use the term the Wolfman, or they can't use the iteration of the Wolfman with that font.
you can't use a Wolfman and his name be Lawrence Talbot.
Got you. Absolutely understood. That
You
makes
can't
sense.
use a wolf man and have the little poem, even a man who says his prayers at night can become a wolf on the full moon when it's bright, or whatever that was the little gypsy lady says to him at the beginning of the movie. You can't use that. That's why Universal required the rights. And so
Likewise,
and so they were able to use the Wolfman and the Lawrence Talbot and all of that. But the way they flipped it was Lawrence Talbot's father was also a Wolfman. And so he inherited the lycanthropy from his father. And then at the end of the movie, rather than Lawrence Talbot getting killed, him and his dad both turn into werewolves and fight each other inside of the Talbot estate while it's burning to the ground.
Hold up, dude. Wait a minute now. I mean,
Oh,
that's some
oh,
liberal
Kai,
license.
please,
That's
please
that's
don't tell me you've never seen the Wolfman with Benicio del Toro.
no. My question becomes, bro, the liberal license of how do you inherit being a werewolf? Don't you have to get bit? You mean you tell me that you can do like Blade and get it through
That
the
that
umbilical
that's
cord?
you that's Universal's universe. And whatever
Wow.
rules Universal say is for lycanthropy and werewolves, that's what you gotta follow.
Does White Wolf know about this? I mean, the company, do they know about this? So sorry. That's cool. I get it. That's wild there. So for those who are paying attention, you can't do the Frankenstein with the bolts. That's Universal Studio Monsters. You can't do that one. You can't do the Wolfman that's got the full hair. You can do the one with the snout, but he can't do the one with the mask where it's the full hair. When it
When
comes
they
down to
did
the mummy,
when they
what else?
did when they did Frankenstein with Robert De Niro, is a different look.
Right,
When they had a Frankenstein in the Showtime show Penny Dreadful,
right.
it was
Oh,
a
it
very
was
different interpolation of the monster. So
true.
while they made it obvious, yeah, this is Frankenstein and that's his monster, it was nothing like the 1931 movie or anything that followed.
Well, true. And okay, and also for those who have never read the original novel, the Frankenstein monster that we know of from 1939, like he just got through, like brother just got through saying, is nothing like the book. That
Not
the
at all.
entire movie is a complete deviation from the book. The only thing that is like the book is the name Frankenstein.
I think Penny Dreadful kind of harkens back a little more respectfully to the source material. They don't just make, Adam an angry, plotting monster. He's
Right.
actually a calculating, intelligent being. He's
Like
just disfigured, so he can't move in them circles and do the things that he needs to do because of the way he looks.
correct.
And
Correct.
and 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 that's a lot of what Penny Dreadful was. He was like, okay, I need you to make me a woman. I
Correct.
need somebody who I can have with me, who love me for me, and so uh, originally Victor von Frankenstein didn't want to do it, and so the monster was going around killing people, and he was telling him, "Okay, I'm doing it, and until you make me a woman, I'm gonna keep killing people that's close to you."
Right.
And then when
With
he finally did acquiesce and make him a woman, the woman was repulsed by him and didn't want to have nothing to do with him. And so, in retaliation, he kills Victor von Frankenstein's fiance.
I was about to say, man, that's getting real close to the series that Universal's did.
Yeah,
That's
I
getting
mean,
real close. I mean, with the spinoff of the fact that in the original novel, the source material, the monster, quote unquote, is intelligent and has the philosophical monologues with his creator, asking the creator, why did you even resurrect me? I was better off dead than I am alive. And now, how the hell do I die again?
let's check some comments. Felix the cat and Dick Tracy.
All right.
Yes,
Okay. Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy is complicated. Dick
yes, it
Tracy is
is.
complicated. I did look up Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy is complicated because Dick Tracy is still in syndication. There's a guy named Mike Curtis who is still writing Dick Tracy and a illustrator named Shelley Pledger. So if you want to talk about the Dick Tracy from uh, 1931, we're getting real close to him being full public domain, though you can't play with it. Now, if you want to talk about Dick Tracy in the middle of the Great Depression, I would be scared. And Warren Beatty is still on the he's still roaming Hollywood, mad at anybody that wants to try and do a follow up to his 1990 film. because he still wants to do a follow up to his 1990 film. But we actually looking at him like, aren't you too old to play the character? Just like Harrison Ford is too old to play Indiana Jones.
That's a really chromatic movie, by the way. So
On
more
purpose.
makes you see where Marvel was headed with Werewolf by Night. I don't know if you
Yes.
did you get a chance to see that, Kokai?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
yes.
they did it in black and white.
True.
So that was already a homage to the 1941. Yes, Wolfman came out in 41.
41.
Paul
I think you
Martin,
just said 39, man.
39.
Was it 39 and 41? We'll have to look it up. We'll get back to you. We'll have to look it up.
Not sure if she's public domain, but an action star on Pippi Longstocking might be a trip. You remember Pippi Longstocking, don't you?
I do. It's just like I'm now looking at the latest iteration of Pippi Longstocking, and I'd have to look at see when the original novels came out, because like Winnie the Pooh is public domain.
I haven't seen a movie about Pippi Longstocking in a while. I got my phone right here. You know what? I don't care if I'm live. I'm look up Pippi Longstocking right now.
Please.
Pippi Longstocking's first appearance, 1945.
So then, no, it is not public domain in any way, shape, or form, because you got to be 26 to 28 for us to be having that conversation. Zorro is public domain. Zorro came out in 1919. Zorro is public domain and an American iteration, so it's not even Mexican. It's a white man who came up with Zorro, if for people who do not know. So you could do whatever presentation of Zorro you want to do, as long as it isn't the Disney versions.
Yeah. And Kamoyo Kid brings up a good one. John, do you remember the video game Darkstalkers?
Wow.
John Talbot, a play on John Talbot.
Uh-huh.
So they didn't do it the exact same way. And also, the werewolf in Darkstalkers is more lupine looking. So it looks more like the howling werewolves, the underworld werewolves.
It looks more like that. In London.
yeah. So you don't have the issue of, hey, you're stealing our. No, that's a good one, Kamoyo.
I got a question about werewolf movies. Here's something that's always irritated me when it came down to werewolf movies, right?
Okay.
Like the Incredible Hulk TV series, werewolves are forever tearing out of their clothes and their skin. So then the question becomes, wouldn't I know in a werewolf movie who's a werewolf because they're walking around naked?
You need to watch The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. Number one, he turns into a werewolf and he goes on a rampage. Because what ends up happening, because his father, I don't want to give away too much of it, but bottom line, he gets put in an asylum. And you know how they put you out in front of a whole bunch of scientists and they want to observe you, and they're like, oh, this is the most strangest form of personality disorder we've ever seen in our life. And Benicio del Toro basically just goes wolf right there in the chair, just starts, his fingernails are popping and clicking and bones are cracking. And at first they're sitting there like, wow, that's interesting. But then when my man starts woofing out, they're like all trying to get out of the room. And my man busts up out of there and just starts murking everybody in the room. And I guess he was pissed about them having him in the room, because he jumps out the window, goes on the roof, jumps down in the middle of London and just jumps in carriages. And it's very visceral.
So yeah, but
when he turns, he never wolfs out to the point where he's out of his clothes. He wolfs up enough to where his pants are like Hulk high, but he still got pants on, and his shirt and his vest and all of that never 100% comes off of him. So when he wolfs back, he shrinks back down. He's got clothes, so it's real easy to just snatch somebody's blanket off of their line and cover itself up and go home. It's just a little problem. He had to stop at the river and wash all the blood off of his mouth.
See, What the name of Michael J. Fox is going on around here?
Hey,
Sounds like Teen Wolf to me.
well, we can't all be Teen Wolf. We can't all be Teen Wolf.
Well, because we don't have high school basketball team seasons to save.
That movie was made the year I graduated high school.
Wow. It was
I
on repeat too much.
just want to let you know how old it is. Penny Dreadful
Right.
was an awesome jambalaya of the class. Yes, it was. And they made Dracula seem almost omnipotent because Dracula was like literally demonic.
Yeah.
Literally, Dracula was literally Satan.
Yeah. And Penny Dreadfuls in the United States of America are known as dime novels, or what we watch, or what we
Red.
well, yeah. But what we read nowadays, when we were small, we called a Penny Dreadful a comic book. It's the same idea.
Right.
That's what it gets down to. It's the same idea. It's got to be a cheap book that's meant for escapism that has all these fanciful things. So I do know that there's a public domain character that they don't. No, is it totally domain? No, the Shadow is still under copyright. But they haven't done a good iteration of the Shadow in forever.
I have to disagree with that statement. There are
What?
wolfmen and there are werewolves.
What?
Aren't they all lycanthropes?
Well, now you just went to the actual species, and that is an iteration for our lifetime that wasn't beforehand. Meaning that if you go to the 1950s and prior, he's correct. They even had the idea of dog men.
But prior to then, it was not referred to as a wolf man. Show me use of the term wolf man prior to 1941.
You know what? Now, off the top of my dome, I cannot do that. But I just would have to, if they're saying dog men and the dog man, and that's European from various cultures, why wouldn't it be Wolfman?
Unless he's referring to the appearance. Wolfmen do not look like werewolves.
Oh, because of the snout. You got it in the dog
Yeah,
men too, because you gotta have the snout.
yeah.
So
So
Wolfman, okay.
Kamoyo, if that's what you was talking about, bro, I apologize, but I guess in my mind, the moon come out and they all gonna tear your ass up.
True indeed. True indeed. Yes, depending on how
Now-
old the werewolf is.
Now I want to get back to this public domain thing, bro. What's the end game? No pun intended. No pun intended.
The end game would be, are you, the average person, able to capitalize, like literally capitalize on a character that is extremely familiar within the culture and make you some cream? Because it's relatively easy to make, with the skills, with the access to materials that we have at the present moment, to get a t-shirt going with a public domain character, to do a YouTube iteration shorts of a character, to do a comic book or comic strip version of the character. The question becomes, how do you reinvent the storylines while still staying within the source material of the character so that it's interesting to the current
fan base?
Yes. So, like, if you're on social media, the presentation of Popeye on social media as a meme is going to be totally different than as a movie, or as a cartoon.
Recently, that was examined. I've seen it examined in two different formats. There is a show that premieres on YouTube regularly, and it's called Death Battle. And
really?
Death Battle. Go look up Death Battle after you leave here. It's basically a show that takes, and I'm paraphrasing here, that takes two characters either out of comics, out of movies, out of
MTV.
history, out of anime,
MTV,
and pit them against one another. They measure their strengths, their weaknesses, their abilities, and then they kind of, based on how they would do it, they say who will win a death battle. Some popular death battles that there have been. There was a death battle between Iron Man and Batman. There was a death battle
How you do that, homie? Hold on, with the
because
copyright infringement.
because they aren't using those characters the way that we would normally use them.
But they're using the name.
Darth Vader has never had a fight with Gandalf.
But they're using the names. I mean, I can understand Gandalf. Gandalf is public domain. Lord of the Rings is public domain.
I think they've been around long enough, and they've gotten enough of a following to where they can get permission to use certain characters.
All right, so like Robot Chicken, they get temporary usage of a character.
Probably similar because they only do things like one time. I mean, there are characters that have been used because and they're usually scenarios that you aren't going to see anywhere else, unless there's some very, 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 very creative shit going on. In no format are you ever going to see Saitama, One Punch Man, fight Popeye.
Correct. Even though that's basically the same character.
And
once he gets his spinach.
Basically, a study in being absurdly OP is what you see when you Saitama. Saitama
OP.
is literally One Punch overpowered.
Got you. Right.
One Punch Man is literally the point and wink at anime characters like Goku, like Naruto, who become so super overpowered that it's like, why is he even fucking fighting anymore? My man can predict what you're going to do before you do it. That's not a fun fight.
Yeah, the Kryptonian does the same thing. And then All Might
and the Kryptonian is OP as well. And because
correct.
And because Goku has instant transmission, which is basically he can teleport anywhere he can think of, now Superman can do it in the comics too. Not to be outdone by my Japanese competition. So what I'm getting at basically is you could take characters on social media and put them in formats that you might not be able to put them in a literary format or in a production by a major studio.
So then my follow-up question, brother man, that we can explore, and I don't know, is because the internet is not as regulated on the copyright as the rest of the mediums, is social media a not free zone or free for all zone, but does it allow for there to be more creative license than, say, if you made it into a cartoon and it got regional play and made some money?
Well, I put it like this. I know a guy who did a Blade short where he actually portrayed Blade.
In person?
Yeah, live action.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Okay, then while I'm thinking about that, let me put you on to another one. Superpower Beatdown.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, but they work with. I thought they were I was of the impression that it was a comic book store that actually reached out to the comic books and they got permission to do the beatdowns because it was promoting the actual characters.
They don't just use comic book characters.
Correct. I understand that.
So they getting permission from everybody.
Right. Because of how they're using it, right? But they have to get the permission. So if you do get the permission, then you can't use the character. When we're talking about when it comes down to public domain, is you ain't got to answer to nobody.
Yeah,
that becomes a thing.
Kokai, that right there, what Moyo Kid put up, that's a superpower beatdown contest.
Correct.
And that's
live action.
One. And that's another
live action. I remember that live action. Because
and what I like about superpower beatdown is that sometimes they give you two different endings.
Oh, sometimes yes.
Because there was a Spider-Man and Darth Maul.
Oh.
And there were two different endings
for one where Darth Maul wins and the other one where Spider-Man wins.
Yeah.
Do they do draws anymore?
Do what?
Do they do a draw anymore?
On
Cause didn't they do one with
superpower,
Wolverine
on,
where there was a 3 and
on
it was a draw?
superpower beatdown, if there is one, I've never seen it.
Okay. Okay.
There have been a few draws on Death Battle though.
I can dude, I don't understand how MTV isn't on top of that like there's no tomorrow, man.
It was called Celebrity Death Battle. That's how they're able to get away with it. Not the same thing, but they make the way the words are blocked looks almost the same.
So then how could Fawcett Comics get sued by the people Action Comics? Was it Action Comics who did Superman originally?
Well, at the time they were known as National Comics, but
Okay,
yeah,
National Comics. How can Fawcett Comics get sued for doing Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, saying that it was a knockoff Superman then?
because it happened in the 1940s.
This is some janky shit, man.
But it was bruh, you could do corny stuff like that in the 1940s, and it wasn't nothing nobody could say about it. Otherwise, if you didn't agree, you were a communist.
Oh, you gonna McCarthy me, huh? Okay, Lord have
hey,
mercy.
based on these people's paranoia, they did away with comic books for a little while. They need superheroes in comic books.
Whenever I think of paranoia in a cartoon character, wait till your father gets home.
One season. One season for that show.
Because it was too real.
America was not ready for wait till your father gets home. They were not ready for that. That shit was too real. That shit was too real for them. Tom Bosley.
Bro, the neighbor looked like Nixon. He literally looked like Nixon. It was bad, dude. It was bad. You're like, yo, dude, y'all got problems over here. It was xenophobic. It was all the bad things. It was on prime time.
It was a prime time cartoon in the early 70s.
Yes.
Can you imagine all the stuff that was being said and done and touted in the early 70s? I'm like, oh my goodness.
True. I mean, my man was more misogynistic than Ric Flair, and that's working hard.
He was basically Archie Bunker, a milder version of Archie Bunker.
Right, whose catchphrase, which I loved, like, I gotta see this. Archie Bunker was off the chain with that one. I gotta see this. He's like, yes. or the to me, like one of the greatest catchphrases of all time, which was done by Little Orphan Annie. You ready? And you got to do it like this: "Gee whiskers."
Yeah.
See, that was a dad joke. That was so bad. That was so bad. I was the only one who laughed behind it. See how that works? Anyway, whatever.
Sometimes dad jokes can be dad specific. You got that, bro.
Whiskers.
You got that. I'm gonna let you be that. But look here, man. Now, I think what I'm getting, the gist of what I'm getting out of this conversation is people out there who are creatives, people out there that, because there's a lot of them, a few of them are in the chat that have creative ideas and they need something that they want to incorporate in it that can make it marketable, I guess is what I'm thinking about, because I work with a cabal of individuals who I've interacted with through social media, and we're trying to implement some things along the lines of original characterization. Something that isn't of public domain, but I myself personally, I am not beyond the idea of actually implementing some of these characters that do not have the yoke of public domain on them to be incorporated into some of these unique stories. What do you think about that? Like, say, for instance, I've got a group of characters that just simply because on the strength of this conversation, introducing into a story with the Headless Horseman.
So we also have a running theme with the Scooby-Doo meets this, Scooby-Doo meets that,
Right.
which work. Okay, they work as a way
For
to
the most part.
introduce, depending on the demographic that you're pointing towards, that your audience is. They work to introduce characters to the young people who had no reference point for these characters. Okay, so to me, I can easily see a Dick Tracy type crossover that's aimed at young people.
How about that right there?
Paul Bunyan with his sidekick Ox, a muscle-bound anthropomorphic ox. I thought that was called Brave Star.
Anthropomorphic. Well, you know what well, that's a horse.
Oh, that was a horse. You're right. Well, it was blue.
And it was a cowboy.
Right, but it was blue.
Paul Bunyan's a lumberjack.
Dude, it's damn near the same thing.
30-30
right?
wasn't blue. 30-30 wasn't blue, was he?
Yeah, he was blue, man. The guy with the shotgun, he would come out with the shotgun, and I thought, he was horrible. He kind of looked like an ox to me, man. But I mean, okay.
No,
so now you go Google it. You go Google it right now.
The sheriff go right down on an ox.
So, because Paul Bunyan was an iteration.
Lumberjack.
He was a lumberjack because he was the spokesperson for a logging company. He's a kaiju for all intents and purposes. So he could definitely cross over to fight King Kong and Godzilla, which the new Godzilla looks great. I would love to do a review of Godzilla -1 with you, bro.
Okay. 30-30 looks kind of gray to me.
He's gray? Okay.
Yeah, he looks gray in this picture.
All right. So I was off. I can be wrong.
He's an equestroid.
Okay. So you were right. I was wrong. He's a horse. So ox is not an ox is a totally different creature.
You might have been thinking of Paul Bunyan.
Got you. Understood. So, but a Paul Bunyan crossover, Pecos Bill crossover, John Henry crossover into a world would be apropos, likewise with Dick Tracy. But I think that when it comes down to usage of the crossovers that are public domains, they're more of an introductory. So like using them to come into generations that are younger than us, that have no idea what it is we're talking about. So if they're millennials or under, if they're in their 30s or under, then you got it, especially if it's babies, you got it.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I talk about sometimes on my videos, and I get comments and people are asking me like, who is that? And I have to stop and think. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is generational.
True.
You know what I mean? So what was like when I say things like Thundercats and Silverhawks and Jason the Wheel Warriors.
Oh wow, Jason the Wheel Warriors.
And see what I'm saying? So cops.
Oh, bad boys, bad boys.
Fighting crime in the future time.
When they come for you.
Bulletproof. Big Boss. Long Arm. You know what I'm saying?
Walking Tall. You remember Walking Tall?
The movie?
No, the TV series.
There was a Walking Tall TV series?
Yeah, that was a TV series before the movies. They made them into movies.
Movies.
Huh?
Before the movies?
As far as I know. I mean,
well,
yeah.
Now, careful now.
We gotta Google it.
No. I don't have to. Walking Tall is based on a true story.
Oh wow!
And it's based on there was actually a Sheriff Buford T. Pusser.
That's a mouthful.
And the first Walking Tall movie came out in the 1970s and starred Bo Svensson.
I thought that was okay. So I remember it
and
as
the first one, the original one was Joe Don Baker. The sequel was Bo Svensson. So yeah, there had to be a live action movie before the animated one.
Right. Well, I thought there was a TV series because I do remember the movies, but I also thought there was a TV series too because I remember watching it every Friday or something. I remember that. But
Maybe it
okay, I could be
was.
wrong.
Maybe it
Could be
was.
wrong.
I ain't watch it. I'm
Got
just
you.
saying. It might have
Understood.
been. Somebody mentioned having a Yeti. We gotta have a Yeti.
Oh wow. Okay, well, I live in Oregon, so there's Sasquatch sightings all over the place. And Bigfoot was originally a native person who killed a whole lot of white people in Idaho.
Really?
There's a statue of him. He was a big cat. They're like 6, 8, 6'9", something like that. They
Not
called him Bigfoot.
not copywritten.
Bigfoot or Yeti?
Either.
Well, Native people are almost invisible in American society, so there's that problem right there. So I mean, I don't know if we can do the copyright because they don't even they practically don't exist. I mean, except for Dark Winds. Dark Winds is a good TV show that's out on AMC. Leaphorn and Chi is the book series that it's based off of. So if anybody need a referral, they just finished their second season finale. It was darn good, kept my attention, but then it's right up my alley. But yes, I would love to see a version of the Yeti or Bigfoot or Sasquatch where the point isn't to try and catch him; he's trying to catch other people. So if you reverse it real quick, then that makes a good sense. And it might be good to have Sasquatch going against a werewolf, not a wolf man, but a werewolf. Since I got educated about the difference between a wolf man and werewolves on this show.
Stop it. Stop
It's
it.
true. It's true. Like Kurt Angle would say.
Edutainment explained it.
Yes. Edutainment.
So okay.
Edutainment.
So Yeti, and now see, now I'm hit with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen thing. Now, okay, now bear with me. Bear
Keep
with
going.
me. It needs to be the right combination of characters.
Yeah, but it's like Defenders of the Earth and those knockoffs cartoons with Phantom and them trying to
Yeah,
use.
but you put the wrong characters together. If I was going to do Defenders of the Earth, what's wrong with the Shadow? What's wrong with Doc Savage?
Okay, one, Doc Savage is overpowered. That would go back to where you were talking about overpowered. Now his sidekicks, his 5 sidekicks, yes, they could be a part of it, and it would actually be interesting because they're flawed enough in order to make the movie interesting. Okay, with the Shadow, the big problem with the Shadow is he's more violent than the Punisher. He's killing everybody. Every movie, every book, he did that. And then the book starts off like with him murdering like 2 people in the opening sequences. Have you ever read a Shadow book?
I own Shadow books.
Okay, so you know how bloody them things is, man. With the one-line
Well,
paragraphs.
we water everything else down for what I say, instead of the Shadow easing back, maybe they need to get a little more bloodthirsty. Okay.
Okay. Because he had to change his cloak a couple of times in certain books, man. He was just going through people.
Well,
They
I'm
deserve to
with
be
it.
got.
I'm with it. Okay. The Shadow and the Phantom will go better together.
True, because that'd be 4 guns blazing. They both are using them guns. And then my man with the skulls, and he's imprinting good and evil on you. Well, dude, that's the shiznit right there. He'd imprint it in your jaw, in your skin, and be there.
And so a lot of those Pulp Fiction characters, a lot of those, I think they mesh well together if you put them together the right way.
So if they had silver bullets and they were taking out a horde of werewolves that was led by General Stratton, who was the headless horseman in a previous iteration, then it would actually work if they're trying to take out the headless horseman, and they got to find his head in order to destroy his head so that he actually stay dead. I don't know.
You want me to put you okay. Now, after I put you on to this, if you ain't onto it already, I will expect you to call me directly and thank me and say, bruh, you put me on to some stuff. Okay.
Call you directly. I hear you. That's the bet. I got you. Yes.
You ever heard of a comic book called Bitterroot?
Bitterroot. Black comic book, ain't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
You
I don't know
read
the
it?
details, but I've not yet read it, but I've seen it come across my feed a number of times.
It is a book that centers around the Sangria family. Okay. And they are basically a black family during the Harlem Renaissance
I'm there.
who are demon hunters.
I'm there. Yeah, I need to order off. How do I order? Just send me the link of how I order these books, because
Bruh,
that is it.
go. You know where LCS is?
What?
Go to your local comic shop.
Oh, that's what an LCS is. Okay. I'm about to say, dude, you were using some serious slang right there, dude. That's blurred slang like a son of a gun. Local
Yeah,
comic shop. Okay, got you. I will. There are
yeah,
several
yeah.
here in Eugene. I can find one.
And
Yes.
and they have trade paperbacks of
Oh,
Bitterroot. So you could get you like a whole trade paperback and get read up on like 7, 8 volumes in one pop.
oh, sort of like what we used to do with ElfQuest back in the day, because the only time you couldn't get them in Anchorage unless it was the graphic novels, and it would really be like 8 books in one, and you'd have to
Right.
just wait every quarter for them to come out. Got you.
Right. So
Got you.
yeah, and all of that's available. So yeah, you can thank me after you read it.
Can
You
and
just
will.
like, wow, because there's a storyline called, you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Red Summer.
Oh, 1919. Okay, yes. That is the Harlem Renaissance for sure. Right. Claude
So
McKay and
so
everything
I
going on.
I ain't gonna tell you about the details of Red
Nope.
Summer.
Nope.
I'm
It'll
gonna
be
just
fun.
let you get off into
Yeah.
that.
I
But
can anticipate.
but bro, we've been here an hour, and I know you are a super duper fan of wrestling.
Correct. And we got Eddie Kingston up front going against the RHO champion. So I definitely do want to get to that. I'm willing to come back. Next month I am available, third week. We can make this a running gag. Well, no, we can't make it a running gag, but
Not a
you get what I
gag.
mean. But you know what I get. You know what I
Yeah,
get. I'm trying to
yeah, I
use
got you.
stage terms. Stage terms.
Well,
Exit, stage left even.
as we edge closer and closer to the world of monetization,
Uh-oh.
a lot of the expectation, I'm being told, is on lives like this.
Is it
So
because of the
yeah,
engagement?
anytime you want to get down for the get down, I'm here for you. Look here, y'all, my man, Kamoyo Kid, Paul Martin, CGZ, and anybody else that was laying back in the wings and didn't want to open up your mouth and speak about it. Oh, my man Theo was here. Appreciate y'all. Give it up for my man Kokai No Sakete. Always ready to come in here on the backup and do some things. This is it for now, but fret not. I will be coming at you with another one of the others. And until I do, y'all be good to each other. Peace.
Peace.